part of this FDP is a troubleshooter. We are a solution maker, and we are supposed to tell you what exactly is the problem. We are supposed to tell you what exactly is the solution to it. So the next 80 minutes has been designed and framed in a way that I'm able to validate few things from the teaching fraternity. I'm able to define a problem that probably the academia is facing, and probably I should be able to give you a solution. Now, on a serious note, why exactly am I the right person? So I'm heading this company called as IceQ Learning. I'm the chief executive officer of this company. So what we do is we are the connect between the campus and the industry. All right, so we are the people who works with the students on their employability skill development. So we work on certain skills with the student, which helps them to get the job in multinational companies along with their academia. So I am somebody who understands the pros and the cons on both the sides. So I understand the pros and the cons on the academia side as well. I am that sort of a person who understands the pros and the cons on the industry side as well. I'm the person who understands what exactly the industry is expecting out of the students that we train. I understand what exactly we are doing and we lack on the academia side as well. So you should consider this session as sort of a bridge, sort of a link between the academia and the industry. That is what I'm striving for in the next 80 minutes. Am I clear? Am I clear, everyone? Am I clear with my point? Am I making sense to you? Am I precise with what I'm exactly saying? Are you guys with me, everyone? Yeah? Super, super, super. I'm getting amazing responses from everyone. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. All right. So what exactly are the topics that we are trying to cover? So there are a few contents that we are trying to cover here. What exactly should be the teacher's objective, the learning approach, how to create a vision, what exactly is the future threat, what are the standard practices which is being followed as of now, what exactly is industry interface, what is crossover learning, leadership style for a teacher, what are the in-demand skills, a sort of a task that I'm going to give you as a project after the session, which is a Genius Hour plan, the IFO problems and conclusion. So this is exactly what we are going to discuss probably in the next 80 to 90 minutes. All right. So are you guys ready? All set to go? Shall we? Yeah. Ready? Ready, everyone? Super. I'm getting amazing responses from everyone. Sudhir sir says, Shalini says, okay, great, great, great. Super. So just feel free to go have your cup of coffee and your breakfast and everything. Sit and relax and listen to the session. Okay. No hard and fast rule on anything. If you are taking the session on a laptop, I'm the most happiest person. Even if it is on mobile phone, there's nothing wrong in it. All right. Super. All right. So let's go ahead. I hope. What exactly is your vision as a teacher? I would like to know what exactly is your vision as a teacher. I'm really curious to know. Can anyone tell me? Probably I'll just give you the option to unmute. Can anyone please tell me what exactly is your vision as a teacher? Anyone? Anyone? Come on. Give me an answer. I have a few very good participants in this batch who can give me amazing answers. Anyone? Yes, I have somebody who has raised, and to be the best in what you do. Kirti Kulkarni ma'am says, okay, best teacher. Okay, Sahyadri says transform students. All right. Anybody else who wants to give me another answer? Everything is right? Shalini says to shape good careers. Okay, great. Deepti Shetty says to create leaders. Okay, wow, great. Some amazing answers, right? See, I'm going to throw an idea for all of you. Okay, so probably ponder and think about it after the session at some point of time. All right. See, you go back and think about the most favorite teacher that you had in your school. Like we always say that your favorite subjects are always taught by your favorite teacher. Do you agree with me when I say that? Your favorite subjects are always taught by your favorite teacher, right? Exactly. Your favorite subjects are mostly taught by your favorite teacher. And so you like that person first, correct? I mean, you like that individual first, and then you start appreciating the teaching skills, and then you start appreciating the subjects. It has always been that way around, at least with me. In my school, in my college, when I went there, even when I started teaching, I have probably taught like more than 2 lakh students in my entire career. What I have learned is they appreciate you as a person first. They appreciate the way you deal with them and your teaching skills, and then they start appreciating the subject that you teach them. You know what exactly should be the vision of a teacher? I always ask any faculty who comes in conversation with me that strive to be a great teacher, not to be the best teacher. Because when you're trying to be the best teacher, you're always trying to compare yourself with somebody else. Okay, out of those 50 teachers in your campus, You are the best teacher. So obviously I'm putting you in comparison. Does that make any sense? Like, does that make any sense in me comparing a max teacher with a science teacher, with a teacher who teaches vernacular, like a Hindi language? Do you think that makes any sense for me to go and compare a teacher who teaches Hindi, teacher who teaches max, and a teacher who teaches probably physics, chemistry? It doesn't make any sense, right? I always told all the management people in colleges that, taking feedback from the students in the name of teaching a subject is a futile, mundane, obsolete, a redundant idea. You should never ever do that. You probably go back and ask how much creativity, how much problem solving, how much questioning that teacher has been able to bring to the table in the class. Instead of that, just don't go and ask a student, did you like the session? Wow. Did you like the teacher? Wow. It doesn't make any sense. What exactly should be your vision? Always strive to be the great teacher, because great teachers have got no comparison. Like, you take somebody like Abdul Kalam sir, whom all of us respect. Would you say he was the best president, or would you say he was the greatest president that we have seen? Can anyone tell me? Can anyone tell me? Would you ever say Abdul Kalam sir was the best president, or would you always say that he was a great president? Come on, anyone? Anyone? Huh? Obviously, he was great because he was beyond comparison for people. You really didn't want Abdul Kalam sir to be compared with anyone. That was mostly because I have been to Rameshwaram, I have been to his museum, I have seen how that person has come up. Somewhere you look at somebody like an Abdul Kalam sir, you know for a fact that this person is beyond comparison. He's a great personality. He's a great personality who went on to become what? A teacher, or maybe a scientist, or a president. So I have got like 80 participants in this profile. If you ask me what exactly should be your vision as a teacher, my humble request to all of you is, Soumya Dilip should be a great individual who is a teacher in a particular campus. That's it. That's it. Kirti Kulkarni should be a great human being, a great individual to her students, who went on to become a teacher in that campus, or maybe a Dr. Venkatesh sir, or a Bhuvaneshwari ma'am, or a Renuka Sagar, or a Chandrasekharan sir. I think all of us, even Ranjit Ravi Keshav, should strive to be a great individual who probably got an opportunity to become teacher for 2 lakh students. I think we need to start from there. I think we need to change our thinking, and we need to start from there. And only when we start thinking from that perspective, that angle, we will be able to put everything else into place. Because if the idea is to become the best teacher, it is never going to work. Any FDP session, any flipped classroom, any design thinking, any creative pedagogy is going to fall flat on its face if you are trying to be the best teacher in the world. If you look at, I just saw Satya Nadella's video where he came back from the US to meet his teacher in India. And there is a video on YouTube. You guys should definitely go and watch that video. And you should see the way Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft, stands in front of his teacher, and the way teacher speaks to him. And she says that I never really thought this guy is going to do this thing, that thing. And then he has so much of respect for her. He is not in school anymore. He's not asking for academic grades. He doesn't need academic marks, assignments, records, nothing. But still, he wanted to come back and meet that teacher is because he admires that person as a great individual or a great personality, right? It is not because of probably the best, the best individual. So the biggest takeaway of my session, you don't remember anything from my session, I'm okay with it. But at least if you can take this back with you, that, okay, the biggest takeaway from Ranjit Keshav's session after that FTP, probably I could think of myself as an individual, my attitude towards my students and my teaching, and then probably I can see how creatively I can put across every other input that he has given during the session. I think that should be the first way to look at it. Now, then what exactly are the problem that we are addressing in India right now? Now, this is something that all of you might have seen at some point of time, right? For a fair selection, everybody has to take the same exams. Please climb that tree. So you see a monkey, you see a pigeon, you see an elephant, you see a dolphin, you see a fish, and everybody is there, right? Now, do you think this is fair? How many teachers think that, this is fair? I know you are asking the elephant to go and climb the tree. The elephant is not able to climb the tree. And the teacher is saying, please bring your father elephant tomorrow. I need to talk to that father elephant. And then the father elephant comes, and then the teacher tells the father elephant, your son elephant is bad at climbing trees. You really need to put your thinking and your attention, and you need to give a lot of time. And then the elephant son says that, but I can't climb the tree, right? Then the teacher says, if you don't climb the tree next time, I'm going to put a fine on you. I'm going to put a fine on you. I'll probably be very, very strict and stringent on you. And then the elephant, the son elephant is like, but how do I climb the tree? I really don't know. I really can't climb the tree, right? And then the monkey is able to climb the tree like so swiftly. And then the teacher says that this monkey is the best in climbing the tree. And who's the worst here? It is the elephant. It is the elephant who is the worst here. Do you think that is fair? And I'm very sure that this thought would have occurred in all your mind at some point of time. I'm very sure of that, right? But do you think this is fair? But just use your common sense. Don't think as a teacher, principal, doctorate, PhD, nothing. Just as a faculty, please think that is it fair to a student? And we obviously understand the fact that we have probably 60 students in a batch. Not all the students are monkeys. Not all the students are elephants. Not all the students are pigeons. Not all the students are fishes, right? But then the whole point is then as a faculty you would come back and ask me, sir, but then what do we do? This is the way the system is. This is the way it is. We cannot just go and tell the elephant that, oh, you know what, elephant, I know that you can't climb the tree, so it is okay. No, I can't do that as a teacher. I need to push that person. I need to push the elephant to believe that you can climb the tree when I know that the elephant cannot climb the tree. The fact is, I do have an elephant sitting in my batch and I need to teach him. If it is engineering, I need to teach him for 4 years. If it is MBA, I need to teach him for 2 years. If it is anything else, I need to teach him for 3 years. And as a teacher, how do I find a solution for that? That is where I somehow believe that the biggest problems that we have faced, or the biggest problem statement is, so the biggest and the foremost problem that we have done is, we have kind of ruined the attitude of those elephants in our class. We have unfortunately ruined the attitude of those elephants in the class. That is the biggest problem. Because we know for a fact that not everybody is an elephant. We know for a fact that not everybody is a monkey. I hope you agree with that, right? Not everybody is a monkey, and the majority is elephant. We know that. Just imagine I take 85 of you people, and I'm also sitting there, and instead of engineering and MBA, just replace that with painting. Just replace that with painting. Suppose our academic system was completely designed and based on the competencies of painting. All the design thinking, all the flipped classrooms, all the debates and the millimeter, centimeter, mentimeter, everything you put together. You please tell me, would it actually do justification to those elephants who are sitting in the class, or that particular class where you don't know how to paint? You put all the possible solutions over there that you learn from this FDP, and then you don't know how to paint. Do you think that will work? Do you think that will work? I'm asking you this question. Do you think that will work? Do you think that will work? Correct. And all these years it has not worked for us. All these years it has not worked for us, right? And that is where we have conveniently ruined the attitude of those elephants in our students. We have a problem there. Do you agree with me when I say that we do have a problem with the attitude of these elephants in our classrooms year after year? It is difficult, but I'm asking this question to everybody. I need an answer from every experienced person who's sitting in my session today. That do you think that we are facing this problem with the elephant year after year, that there is a certain section of these elephants sitting in the batch whose attitude is not something that we would appreciate, and sometimes they might create ruckus, sometimes they get aggressive, sometimes they get into fights with their students, sometimes they become drug addicts. They totally lose their guidance in life, totally lose direction in their life. So do you agree with me? So I need more answers from everyone. So I have some very senior people in this batch. I'm asking this question from everybody to everybody, that do you see these elephants in your batch? Do you see there is a problem in actually getting the attitude of these students up the curve? So we do have a problem with the attitude in the system, right? So that is the first thing. Now let us look at the monkeys now. Okay, now let's look at the monkeys now. So what exactly is the problem with the monkey here? The problem is the ability part of it. So are we doing justification with the ability part of it as a system? So I'm not talking to Venkateshwaran sir. I'm not talking to Venkatesh sir or Bhuvaneshwari sir. No, I'm talking to a system. All of us are part of the system. All of us are part of the system. And you are not the first person. I'm not the first person. You are not going to be the last person. I'm not going to be the last person. So as a whole, this academic system, are we doing justice to those monkeys, to their aptitude? That is the question, right? Now, so let me just put this point across to everybody here. So I'm asking this question. With 136 crore population in India, could you please tell me how many schools do we have in our country? Can anyone tell me? I'll give you a clue. With 146 or 47 crore population in China, the number of schools in China is roughly around 5 lakhs. All right. The number of schools in China is roughly around 5 lakhs. With 136 crore population, how many schools do you think we have in our country? Anybody give me a guess? Come on. Anybody gives me the right answer, 100 rupees to your Google Pay account after the session. Come on, anyone? Okay, no, Soumya, you cannot say lakhs. You need to tell me the number. Okay, come on, anyone? Okay, 1,200, okay, about 12 lakhs. Apurva says around 3 lakhs. Okay, come on, give me more answers. No, Kirti says 10 lakhs. Okay, I'm getting the same answer from the same people. Come on, everybody, contribute. No, Seenat says 8 lakhs. Kirti says 10 lakhs. Come on, please give me answers. How many schools do we have in our country? Anyone? Monisha Shetty, Vinola, Nagaraj Rao sir, Neelu, Pavan, please give me answers. Only one cricket which is more promoted. Okay, 7 lakhs. Ekta says, Shalini says, Prashant Gujnal sir, please give me. Now, please, okay, now hold your nerves, everyone. We have 15 lakh schools. We have 15 lakh schools in our country, 15 lakh schools. Just imagine 28 states and probably 8 union territories, 6 union territories in our country. We roughly have 15 lakh schools in our country, 15 lakh schools. You know what exactly the problem that India is addressing with our educational system? And imagine with the 146 crore population, China has got only 5 lakh schools. With 136 crore population, India's number of schools is almost probably 3 times more than China. Now, just imagine what exactly is the problem that Indian educational system is addressing. What we are saying is, maybe there is a girl in a village in Assam who's, she's not able to go to school because the school is 50 kilometers away from her home. So what we will do is, we will probably put a school next to her village, probably 2 kilometers away from her village, so that she has the attitude and the motivation to go to the school, and we will give her a midday meals. We will give her midday meals so that she is more motivated to go and attend the classroom. So with these two objectives, to empower students, obviously, what we have done is we have established like 15 lakh schools in the country. Now, what we didn't thought about is, in these 15 lakh schools, what exactly is the system? The system is, you have 2 teachers and 1 maid who will probably cook the food. Cook the food for the students. These are the 3 people in the school. There are no principals. There are nobody else. 2 teachers and 1 cook. And these 2 teachers will teach students from 1st standard, 2nd standard, 3rd standard, 4th standard, 5th standard, English, science, mathematics, the vernacular language, everything. Just imagine the plight of those students who are walking out of these schools by the time they are 10, 11 or 12. And that is where we fundamentally have a problem with their academic system, that we believed in the numbers somehow, thinking that we could empower people, we could increase the equity of education in India, but somewhere we didn't think about the quality. And then what happened? Now, if you look at the slide over there, India as part of the PISA ranking, now all of you know what exactly is a PISA ranking, right? It is the International Student Assessment Program. It's an examination by the Economic Corporation of the World. It's a beautiful test. It tests your reasoning ability, your problem solving in your maths and your science. That is the exam all about. India last took this exam in 2008. Can you believe India last took this exam in 2008? And when India took this exam in 2008, India's rank was 72 out of 74 countries. Can you believe that? India's rank was 72 out of 74. I think the 73rd country was Kyrgyzstan. It was Kyrgyzstan. And after 2008, India has never ever taken this test again. I heard India was preparing for 2021, but then I'm not very sure if India has taken the test. But last time in 2008, when India took the PISA test, which is a global ranking for a country with regards to the performance of their students at the age of 14 and 15 in problem solving, reasoning in maths and science, this was the situation. You can go to Wikipedia, you can look at a PISA test, you can look at the countries, and you will not find India in any of those lists. Any of those lists, you won't find India. Now, we have a severe problem with the aptitude part of it. We have a very, very huge problem. So now you guys would probably say, but sir, we are engineering faculty, we are MBA faculty, we are arts and science faculty. So what exactly is the problem with the aptitude of our students? Let's come to that. let's come to that. Now, you talk about probably, see, okay, so this is something that I heard from the Zoho Corporation founder Sridhar Vembusa, where he categorically, in one of his speeches, he made this amazing point that you see the Kubota tractor, the rice tractor that we use in India, it is not made by an engineer in India. It is made by whom? Kubota is what? Kubota is a Japanese brand. You see that MRI scanning machine, which is of 5 crores, it's worth 5 crores. It is made by a German company. And if you see that Rene knife with the sharp blade, it is a German company. It is a German company. So the question is, do we need MRI scan? We need MRI scan. Do we need Kubota rice tractor? We need. Japan doesn't even use a rice tractor, but they manufacture rice tractor. Do we need a Rene knife? We need it. But do we make it? We don't make it. Why? There is a need. There is a need with 136 crore population, but there is nobody else to make all this, and still we say our engineers are unemployed. Look at the disconnect. Look at the disconnect that we have thousands and thousands of engineers coming out saying they're unemployed, but then there is a huge market where they can probably apply their skill, their competency, their talent, their knowledge, and the ability to come out with such products, but they simply fail to do so. They simply fail to do so. And then there is a Japanese brand who is making money out of our country. Then there is Siemens, a German-based company who is making money out of our country. Why? Because fundamentally, there is something wrong with the ability of our students or the aptitude of our students. And if you go on YouTube and watch Shashi Tharoor's speech on engineers' unemployability, you will know the reality of our country, that we do have a problem with the aptitude of the students that we are training from these institutes across the country. So what exactly is the problem? As I said earlier, the problem is very, very simple. We have a problem with the aptitude. We have a problem with the attitude as well. Now, as a faculty, if today you are working with an engineering campus, today you are probably working with an MBA college, understand that our challenge is to address the attitude of those elephants. Our challenge is to address the aptitude of those monkeys, because these monkeys are walking into our campuses as intelligent students. With 95, 98%, they're walking into our institutions. But are they walking out of those institutions with that much more upgraded and comprehensive, consolidated sort of an IQ, with the aptitude to do engineering? That is a huge question mark. Out of the research, the 100% research that happens across the globe, the contribution of our country, India, is less than 3%. It is roughly touted at 2.8%. The contribution of research from India to the world is probably at 2.8%. That is probably the reason why we see a Sundar Pichai at the helm of the affairs with Google, but he is not the founder of Google. That is the reason why we see an Indian called as Satya Nadella at the helms of affair with Microsoft, but he is not the founder of a Microsoft. That is the difference. So we do have a problem with the attitude of the elephants and the attitude of the monkeys. We need to address both. Very, very important. So any faculty who's planning to probably stay in this profession for the next 25, 30 years should have this thing in your mind, that modern day problem requires modern day solutions. What are the modern day problems? These are the problems that we have. Have I made myself very clear with my case, everyone? Have I made my case very clear with all of you? I've even given you substantive points to make my point across to you, because I'm not just making points out of thin air. I'm actually giving you facts, which is proving the point that we need to go back and address the attitude of the elephants as well as the aptitude of these monkeys. So what exactly we can do? So as I said earlier, that now that I have validated something and I have defined the problem, obviously I should be able to give you the solution as well. So what exactly are we talking about here? So let's look at it one by one. So is there a school? Is there a system where they have addressed both the elephants and the monkeys? Yes, they do. So the school is called as SecMol. I don't know how many of you have heard of the school. If anybody has heard about the school called as SecMol, then please put a message. I'll be more than happy. If you see the photograph over there, the guy with the Ray-Ban shades, that is me. I can be quite good looking in a picture, not in real life, but probably in a picture I can be quite good looking. If you look at the school Sekmol in Ladakh, Students Educational and Cultural Movement of Ladakh, how many of you have seen Three Idiots? How many of you have seen Three Idiots, the movie Three Idiots? Anyone? Anyone? Amir Khan's Three Idiots, Rajkumar Hirani's Three Idiots. Now, if you remember the school from Three Idiots, that school and Amir Khan's character was inspired from this school called as Sekmol, and Sonam Wangchuk, who is the founder of that school. So I actually got to hear about the school, and you won't believe I am so passionate about my profession and the field called as education and my students that I took a bike and I went to Ladakh. I got down in Delhi, I went to Ladakh, I took a bike, and from Leh, 40 kilometers away from Leh is the school called as Sekmol. This was founded in 1988. You know, if you see that student on your left side on the screen with the specs, his name is Sukram. His name is Sukram. So he is the host for all the people who would visit Sekmol. You know who is he? He's a 10th standard failed person. He's a 10th standard failed person. He's a 10th standard failed student. A school told him that you're not good enough to live your life. You're not good enough to come up in your life. You have failed in academics. You are an elephant. Please go. And he is actually the most integral part of Sekmol Ladakh. If you look at the second photograph, you will see the photographs of all the students who are the respective achievers in different fields in that school. And hold your nerves, everybody. All these students are 10th standard failed. Can you believe if I say this? All these students are 10th standard failed students. That particular school will only take those students who fail in 10th standard. If you pass in 10th standard, they don't take you in. They don't take you in. They will take you only if you fail in your 10th standard. And if you look at, I'll take all the questions, Abuwa sir. I'll just finish this, but I'll take all the questions towards the end. I'm just giving you my word for that. If you look at the last photograph, do you see transdisciplinary skills? That is something that is being taught in that school. And most of us don't even know what exactly is transdisciplinary skills, right? It is the research skills, it is the social skills, it is the communication skills. This is what is being taught in that school. You know what exactly is the curriculum of that school? This is very, very interesting. Huh? The curriculum of that school is very, very simple. You know what they teach them? They teach them three things, mostly. They teach them three things. They teach them how to speak English. They teach them public speaking. Okay, they teach them public speaking, like how to stand in front of a group of people and talk. And they teach them one of the vocational skills. So it could be carpentry, it could be some vocational skills where they can go and make a living after they graduate from the school. And you know, it has been designed in a way that this was fascinating. The European lady who heads the operations over there at this point of time, you know what she told me? She said, Ranjit, if a student cannot speak in English, probably that student will make a career out of the vocational skill that we are teaching them. And if a student is not good in vocational skills, that student probably will make a career with the English language. If these two things doesn't work, that student will at least have a great attitude towards life. He would have done probably 150 activities in that campus. He will be someone who can finish a task in his life, and he will probably find a living. So there is something for everybody in the school. So that means there is a space for the monkey, there is a space for the elephant at Sekmol. Now the question is, can't we design a curriculum? Can't we design an academic year where there is space for the monkeys and the elephants? That's what I'm asking. See, forget about the academic grades, forget about the degree. We will talk about that. Those are very, very important things. CGPAs are very, very important. Everything is important. But as a human to human, I'm asking this question to all of you. Can't we design a curriculum? Can't we design an academic year where there is space for the monkeys and the elephants? That is my question to all of you. Yes or no? What do you think? Out of your own experiences, I'm asking this question to all of you. What do you think? Anyone? Anybody? Come on, give me an answer. I would love to. But yes, we can, right? We can definitely. So what exactly should be a teacher's vision? You know, for me, there should be something in your course for everybody in your class, regardless of their IQ. That is my vision. I'll go and tell this to probably the best teacher in the world, that there should be something in your course that everybody in your class should have a space. You know, it is very, very simple, right? See, look at it like this. I mean, don't think that I'm trying to compare you with a sort of a driver's job, but still, see, I'm just giving you the simple example. Suppose you are a driver. You're the driver of a bus. Okay. Suppose you're the driver of a bus. All right. Now I'm saying that I'm giving you 60 passengers. I'm giving you 60 passengers. Take them in your bus. This is the destination that you're supposed to take these 60 people. At probably you start off at 9 o'clock and you need to reach the destination by 8 o'clock in the evening. This is what I'm giving you. I'm not telling you how to drive the car. I'm not asking you to make them comfortable. I'm not asking you where to stop for a break, nothing. Everything is your responsibility. All I'm saying is where to start, where to end, how many people are there, and I've given you the bus. That's it. This is exactly what education, this is a freedom that education gives you most of the time. The university and the college gives you a syllabus, they gives you 60 students, they assign a teacher, having the confidence that this teacher has the skill, the competency, the ability, and the talent to be flexible enough to accommodate the monkeys and the elephant so that we can finally go and achieve our goal. Finally, we can go and achieve our goal. And that is what I'm asking you, that can't you design that driving for yourself, because you have the autonomy, you have the freedom, you have all the room to decide how I want to drive these 60 people home. And all I'm saying is that forget about the exams, forget about the CGPAs and everything. You have been given a task, but how to execute that task for the entire year, nobody has told you. And that is where your teaching skills are very, very important. And that is where your creativity comes into play. That is where your creativity comes into play. We are not teachers only to make monkeys the superstars. You become a great teacher when you make one of those elephants a superstar in life. Understand that. Monkeys by default will become superstars. They don't need you and me. They don't need you and me. Understand, they're indigenously talented. They're organically talented. Our creativity, our improvisation is, who requires it? It is those elephants. And we should be able to calibrate both these monkeys and elephants in a way that we motivate each other, we motivate everybody, and we take them to the destination. That is what is required. So you plan anything after this FTP, probably you will go back and plan your session at some point of time. You should probably have subject knowledge in your mind. You should probably have skill and competency, in your mind, leadership in your mind, people management skills, core talent and aptitude towards a skill, multitasking ability. It has to have everything. It has to have everything, because if an elephant fails in the subject knowledge, he should have some room to improve his leadership skills. If somebody fails probably in a people management, that person should have something to do with multitasking or the ability. So some people will have everything. So some of the students, they have everything. People who are somebody like Sneha Reddy from IIT Hyderabad, who got through with Facebook for a package of 1.2 crores. She got through with a package of 1.2 crores from IIT Hyderabad. I looked at the profile of the girl. She has everything. Great communication skills, great subject knowledge, great leadership skills, great skill competency, great people management, great core talent aptitude, great multitasking, great ability. Let it be exceptional talent. Let it be. No, it is fine. Certain monkeys are like that. They have everything. Then certain elephants, where we need to teach them these transdisciplinary skills as well, right? So when you create something for an entire year for your students, my humble request is accommodate those monkeys and elephant, and have all this in your curriculum. You should be able to design it in a way. Now, I don't know how many of you would agree with this, but I have a two-pointer philosophy for all of you. Understand. See, the world needs two types of people. All right. See, okay, let me just tell you this, guys. See, at the end of the day, why are we teaching somebody? At the end of the day, why are we teaching somebody? You please tell me this. Why are we teaching a student at the end of the day? Can anyone tell me why are we teaching a student at the end of the day? Anyone? Why are we teaching students at the end of the day? Can anyone tell me why are we teaching students at the end of the day? Anyone? Come on, give me an answer. Why are we teaching students at the end of the day? Why is it that we are given the responsibility to teach students at the end of the day? Because we can empower these students, self-independent. We can empower these students. The students can get a job. They can go and make money. They can improve their living standards. They can go and support their parents. They can become self-reliant, self-sufficient. At the end of the day, that is what we are trying to teach these people. Trust me, we are not teaching somebody to be a good engineer. No, I maybe that is not my priority. That could be my second or third priority, not my first priority as a teacher. My first priority is to ensure that all the students who are part of my batch gets a job, become independent, improve their living standards. If the student's father earns 800 rupees per day in in their family, this student after completing the graduation should be able to make 1,000 rupees in a day, and their living standards must improve. And that is what for me education is all about. Do you agree with me when I say that? Do you agree with me when I say that we are trying to empower students to become independent and improve their living standards? And the second priority is to make them great MBA graduate or a great engineer. So understand that if that is the objective that you have, to make somebody empowered with employment, I have a two-pointer philosophy for you. See, the world requires two types of people to do the job. One, people who can do the job. The second, people who will actually make these people do the job. Understand that. So either you teach the student how to do something, or teach them how to make others do the job. Because these two people have relevance in this world. These two people have relevance in this world. So let the monkeys go and do the job. Let the elephant make them do the job. Can't we look at it like that? Can't we design a curriculum in a way where we make the monkeys good at what they want to do, and let us make these elephants good at their leadership skills, their multitasking, their people management, so that they go and make others do the job in this world, because we need these two people. Every product an engineer makes in the world needs another engineer or an MBA person to sell it off to the world. Yes or no? Do you agree with me when I say that? Every product that an engineer makes in the world needs another engineer and an MBA person to sell it off to the world. So don't you think we have space to accommodate the monkey and the elephant? We do have. So when we have the space, when we have that opening, when we have that opportunity, why can't we design a curriculum where we can accommodate both the elephant and the monkey? That is my question to all of you. But somewhere down the line, we have drastically forgotten the fact that the idea of education is not just about academics, it is about empowerment. We have forgotten that fact conveniently. Honorable Nehru, when he decided to put IIT Kharagpur in the map of this country's engineering education, of course, he had research in his mind, he had engineering skills in his mind, he had growth of this nation in his mind, but he also thought about the 16% literacy in this country. He also spoke about the 16% literacy in this country. And out of the 16%, he said that probably 8% out of the 16% in this country, it was women. Women could, there were only 8% of women who could read and write out of those 16% in the country. So he said we need empowerment. So IIT Kharagpur was established in a detention center with the idea of empowerment first, and then it transformed into how to teach India, to teach engineering to our people here. So education is about empowerment. Understand that. I cannot look at education with any other priority to begin with. Of course, there would be 10,000 other priorities that you would have. So this is one line that I would like to tell everybody, that great teachers are known for their out-of-the-box vision with every student in the class. They are not known just for the academic results of few students. Understand. So are you trying to be a great teacher? Are you trying to be a great teacher? Then understand that the testimony is great teachers are known for their out-of-the-box vision. You should be able to think creatively out of the box for every monkey, every elephant in your class. You cannot be known as a great teacher only for the academic results of the monkeys. You should be able to, spread the wings of your teaching skills for everybody in your classroom. And I think that is a pretty much a noble thought. And if you can probably relate to it, I'm the most happiest person in the world. Now, when you, so that is my first case with all of you. Now, how many of you have heard this line? So let's come to the monkeys now. How many of you have heard this line, everyone, that our syllabus is outdated, our teachers are outdated, our university and our college is outdated. Students always come back and say this, right? That is sort of an urban legend that we hear year after year. I mean, do you agree with me when I say that students usually speak about their syllabus and their curriculum in a way that it is always outdated? Yes or no? At the grassroots level, I have always heard students come back and tell me this, that my college is outdated, sir. My syllabus is outdated, sir. My faculty is outdated, sir. I don't know, sir. I'm learning about petrol engine and diesel engine, and the world is talking about electrical vehicles here. A lot of people talk about that. So the world is talking about electrical vehicles, sir. I'm still learning petrol engine and diesel engine. Why? Why? And a lot of people come back. I'm just giving you an example. Right? And all across India, it is pretty much the same. And even you take computer science, electronics, and communication. And European countries, China and Japan, they're talking about 60 right now. They're talking about 60 right now. They're talking about industrial revolution 5.2 and 6.2. We are still in 4.0 right now. So 1.2 was what? Producing energy through steam. 2.0 was electricity. 3.0 was computers. 4.0 was automation, robotics, and machine learning. Right? 5.0, 6.0. People are talking about 5.0 and 6.0. We are still, reeling across 4.0 right now, and the academia still hasn't reached 4.0. I don't know how many institutions in this country is teaching probably students machine learning in its core level, or artificial intelligence or robotics automation process in its core level, because the industry is 4.0 right now. So I always see, you should remember this. See, we can't blame the university. We can't blame the colleges, because see, we cannot go back and update our curriculum every 6 months. That is not possible. That is not possible. That is not possible. Correct? Practically, it is not possible. Maybe for a Zoho corporation, a Zoho University can probably do that. You guys should definitely go and read about Zoho University in Google and YouTube. Zoho University can probably pick up somebody from Tenkasi and train them for 10 months in the cutting edge technology. But for a university at large, it is not possible. So as a teacher, what can we do? Now, this is what I wrote in one of my articles, that we cannot update syllabus and curriculum for every 6 months. However, our education system has to be formulated in such a way that it creates interest, develops passion, builds curiosity in our students to self-learn and explore. It is not the ability that education needs to recognize all the time, but work on a model to enhance the attitude of the student. Now, this is what I wrote in one of my articles, that we need to make our students self-learning is important, self-motivated, because you teach them about petrol engine and diesel engine in a way that the student goes to Google and learn about electrical vehicles on his own. Will you be able to generate that interest in the student with whatever material you have? That is the question. So it is not about outdated. See, everything is important. You directly go and teach somebody about electrical vehicle, and this student doesn't understand what petrol engine and diesel engine, the history of engines. It doesn't make any sense. Everything is important. Everything is important. We need to teach him petrol engine. We need to teach him 2G, 3G, 4G. Everything is important. Everything is important. But teach him in a way that it develops an interest in him to go and do self-learning. That is what is more important. It is a hybrid. See, you need to go back and tell this to all your students, all right? The biggest mistake that your students are doing is they somehow believe that their college, their university, and their teacher are the only source of learning that they have. That is the biggest mistake that they are doing. That is just one of the sources of their learning. Students should believe that or understand that their teachers, their college, and their university is just one of the sources of the learning, and they are not the only source of learning in this world. Now, if you want to go and encompass that sort of an idea with your students, you should be able to design your classroom, your session in a way that that student goes out of the classroom to learn things on their own. If you can't do that, you're not a great teacher. You're not a great teacher. If you aspire to be a great teacher, your vision should be on those lines. You go and teach the most outdated thing in the world. I don't have a problem, because for me, every education, whatever is being taught to me is good to me. That's what I personally believe. But teach me in a way that I am able to generate some sort of an interest in that subject. That is what I would love to listen to my professor. That is what I would love to learn. That is what I would love to go back and read, right? And that is very, very important. Like, I love politics. I read a lot about politics. I'm a political policy analyst. I'm a political policy analyst is because my grandfather taught me politics in a way that it was so interesting. It was so interesting the way he taught me politics, and I'm really interested in politics. I'm a political policy analyst by profession in national news media, and it works wonders for me there. So it is about how you teach somebody something, right? Now, in that case, all right, so you should be able to design a syllabus, as I said earlier, where you accommodate the monkeys and the elephant, where you have room for everyone, as well as you should be able to design in a way that self-learning, self-driven, self-motivated, and self-managed, these four characteristics are part of your syllabus all the time. Understand that. As a teacher, you cannot do the job all the time. It is close to impossible. You cannot do it. You cannot do it. You will have to push these students. You probably have like 40 minutes in a day with the student. That is not good enough for somebody to improve their ability and their attitude. It is not possible. So you design anything. You design a syllabus to accommodate subject knowledge. You design a syllabus to accommodate the leadership and the people management skills, whatever you do it. But it has to be driven with an undercurrent of self-learning, self-driven, self-motivated, and self-managed. Very important. And that is what we are talking about. That is what andragogy is all about. So see, pedagogy is not something that we should adopt in colleges. Pedagogy is a method where the students rely on the teachers. What exactly is andragogy? Andragogy is where it's the art of teaching adults. It is the art of teaching adults. Pedagogy and andragogy are two different forms, two different areas of teaching. Understand? See, I don't have enough time to talk about andragogy, but I'll definitely ask you to go and read more about andragogy than pedagogy. Understand that? Because andragogy is where reasoning is important. Problem solving ability is important. You ask questions and you discuss. That is what andragogy is important. Your people are grown up adults. They are 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. They're almost like you. They're almost like you. You cannot teach them like how you learned in your school and your college. Times have changed. Technology has emerged. We really need to think from their perspective as well. So I'll definitely recommend you to go and read more about andragogy. Because of time constraints, I'm not able to kind of put everything together. So what exactly am I proposing to all of you? So now this is where I come as a troubleshooter, right? Genius hour. Now, if you can probably go and introduce a concept called as genius hour. This is very famous in Europe. This is very famous in Europe, and you won't believe, in Europe, most of the schools, all right, most of the schools in Europe, the teachers in their schools teach kids from the age of 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 using andragogy and not pedagogy. Please understand. So what exactly is Genius Hour? Now, Genius Hour is a concept that stemmed out of Google, where Google gave 20% of the employees' working hours every week to create their own projects out of their own passion and their interest. So they said, you take 20% of your working hours, go and develop whatever you want. And if you have a great idea, come back to us. And that's how Orkut, I hope all of you remember Orkut. And I think even Gmail came out of the Genius Hour, the concept at Google. Now, Genius Hour is something that is being introduced in most of the schools in Europe. Now, what exactly is the goal of Genius Hour? It is to engage students through inquiry, problem solving, and critical thinking. Now, suppose, as I said earlier, suppose you teach them Python or you teach them C++, and then you give them that Genius Hour option to go and develop a project which is based on machine learning or robotics or artificial intelligence. You give that room for the students. So I'll probably go into the details in the coming slides, but just understand what exactly is this Genius Hour concept. So let me just try and play this video for all of you. So it's a very simple sort of a video. I sincerely hope that your connectivity should pretty much be in place for all of you to go through it. Are you guys able to follow me? I mean, I'm just so passionately talking about stuff, but are you guys able to follow me, everyone? Are you guys with me? Everyone? Okay, super. Great. So I'll probably just, okay. So just 30, 40 seconds, okay? That's it. Just to introduce you to the idea. I thought it would be great if I can probably just introduce you to the idea. Okay, great. All right, so okay, so I'm just trying to pull this out for all you people. Okay, fine. Can you see a white screen, everyone? Can all of you see a white screen? Can all of you see a white screen? If you could just probably put a message for me. Thank you so much, everyone. All right, great, great, great. So just hear this out, 30 seconds, all right? I think there is a subtitle also, so don't worry about it. And in case you are not able to watch this video because of connectivity issues, don't worry about it. I'll give you the YouTube video link towards the end, so no worries at all.
They are working on a Genius Hour project. So one of our standards is actually incorporates lots of different standards from many different subject areas. But one of the big ones is being able to complete an informational research paper, as well as being able to conduct all the research and being able to present their learning to an audience.
Well, since my dad told me that we were German one day, I wanted to know a little bit more about it. So my dad said I should learn German words. So here are all the German words that my dad told me to learn. And so I didn't want to do just words. So I did other things like the timeline and the culture of Germany. It's about like how pyramids are in the middle of town. They use traps and stuff to keep away like from people stealing the possessions and their tomb, which is worth a lot of money. Right now I'm making a diagram of a shark. I did sharks because I think that they're really misunderstood.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the number one thing is this is learning. They're following their passions, their interests. This is personalized learning at its best.
Great. Great. I hope all of you kind of understood what exactly is the idea, right? I hope all of you kind of got what exactly is the idea of Genius Hour. See, you introduce this concept called as Genius Hour in your curriculum with your students, all right? Let the monkeys go and use their subject knowledge to build whatever they want. Let the elephant be part of such projects, no? It will become a great synergy. It will become a great synergy if you introduce a concept called as Genius Hour, where you give them tasks and bring in both the monkeys and the elephant together, and then let them start developing, concepts out of what they have learned or out of their passion or out of their interest. That is where you are driving that passion and interest in the students to create something and learn about problems and solve it. And at the end of the day, they get that sense of achievement. So a student who is bad at education or bad at academic grades would still feel that, listen, you know what, I've been part of that MBA, I've been part of that engineering, where I had that sense of accomplishment, I had that sense of achievement, right? That is what I'm trying to drive with this idea called as Genius Hour. Now, so if you go ahead and introduce this idea called as Genius Hour, okay, Genius Hour, how will you probably design the task? That is what I'm going to talk to you next. How exactly will you be able to design the task? Are you guys with me, everyone? Are you able to follow what I said? Did you understand the concept Genius Hour, everyone? Did you understand the concept Genius Hour? Yeah, everyone? Okay, great. So let me just simplify it for you. Let me just break it down for you, all right? So what exactly will be the methodology? See, you should be able to drive any task in your campus where there is peer learning and knowledge sharing. Because see, peer learning is if I'm able to share my learning with my friends. We all know how we learned in our college, right? Combined studies worked wonders for all of us. The most intelligent guy in the class, the way he explains to me works wonders for me at times, better than a professor who would come and explain with every knowledge that he has under the sun. All of us agree with that, yes or no? Yes or no? It is not because the teacher is bad or ineffective. It's just that we find our peer to be more, we can connect with that particular person better than our teacher. Yes or no? Do you agree with me when I say that, guys? The connect, correct. So we should be able to design a task where we facilitate peer learning and knowledge sharing. So design a task, okay? Design any task. I'll tell you how to design the task in the next slide. Don't worry about it. So, okay. So when you design the task, so right now what I'm doing is I'm going to step 4 and 5 instead of 2 and 3, but I will come back to that. Don't worry. So the 4 and 5, how do you go about it? So when you design the task, build a team, okay? Build a team with the monkeys and the elephants, all right? Build the team with the monkeys and the elephant, share the responsibilities. So you very well know what the elephant is capable of. You very well know what the monkeys are capable of. Share the responsibilities and then let them know each other. There is a Japanese concept for teamwork, which is called as koyume seide. Koyume seide. Koyume seide means when you're planning a task, the leader, as a teacher, you should know what one can do, what one has to do, and what one wants to do. These three things are very, very important. So when you are designing a task for a genius hour in your academic curriculum for a year to involve both the monkeys and the elephant, build a team, share the responsibilities according to their strengths and weaknesses, get them, let them know each other. But then as a leader, as a teacher, you should know what they can do, you should know what they should do, and you should know what they want to do as well. These three things are very, very important. Koyume seide, this is a concept. You won't even find this concept in YouTube because it is not even there. So don't you worry about that. You probably go read few books and you will understand how Japanese people work in a way that they say Koyume seide is much more than trust. They say that trust comes only after Koyume seide, because when you're planning a task and you want people to trust you, it will happen only when what one can do, what one has to do, and what wants to do. Once you set the expectation with these three things in your mind, only then your students will start trusting you as a teacher. Now, this is how you will design a task in your Genius Hour where you will facilitate peer learning and knowledge sharing. Are we clear? Are we clear with this, guys? Are we clear with this? Don't worry about the complete picture. I'll complete it for you. Don't worry. But are you clear with this at least? Yeah. Great. So let's just go ahead now. Okay. All right. So how to identify the problems for the task? That's a question that you guys would be asking. Sir, okay, sir. We have the Genius Hour. We have the team. We have the monkeys and the elephant. We have the strength and the weaknesses. What one can do, what one has to do, what one wants to do, and everything. But how do we identify problems? See, basically, who is an engineer or who is an MBA graduate? Basically, he's a problem solver. He's a problem solver, right? I don't want an engineer to come and talk to me about problems. I want him to come and talk to me about solution. You want to take back something very effective from this session? Please go back and tell your students that the world has made you into an engineer for solving problems. The world has not made you an engineer to come to a teacher like me with your problems. You need to come out with solutions, because you have two students in your class, X and Y. X always comes to you with problems. Y always comes to you with problems and solutions. You tell me, whom will you appreciate more between X and Y? Whom will you appreciate more between X and Y? Anyone? Definitely the Y, right? Definitely the Y. Now, this problem is not just related to academics. I understand. It is not just related to academics. It could be anything. Sir, I'm not able to do my assignments because of internet problem. Then you should tell him that, see, when you come to me and say that you have an internet problem, you should come out and tell me the solution also. That is where I improve. That is where, as a teacher, you're improving the attitude of the student. Understand that. Unless and until we drive our students into solution makers, we are never going to become a great teacher. Understand? So the whole idea of Genius Hour is to ensure that we expose our students to maximum number of problems and find the solution through a methodical sort of an approach. So how do we identify the problem? So now, if you want to probably identify the problem, so servant leadership is something that I would definitely want all of you to go back and read on Google. Servant leadership is where the leader is selflessly working to support his or her people and the community. All right. So how do you identify the problem? Very simple, right? Connect real-time problems in an informal setting to classroom learning. So if you have a local body or a panchayat or a village officer, whoever is there in your district or your region, talk to those people and tell them that, sir, I have a team of people. And if you have any real-time problem, if you have any real-time problem, you please come to us as a teacher, as a group of engineers. We should be able to come out with a solution. And servant leadership is what you need to drive down with your students, probably after this FDP session, because that is how you cultivate great attitude. Let these elephants go out and empathize with people. Let them know what exactly are the real problems. Let them know why they are doing engineering. Let them know what exactly the subject knowledge could be used for. Let these monkeys add value to these people with their competency and their ability. So see, you cannot teach engineering in classrooms. You cannot teach engineering in labs. You cannot teach engineering in conferences. You cannot teach engineering in review papers. It is not possible. It is not possible because every invention in this world has come from the fringe, not from peer reviewing papers. That's what I've understood. Because if you sit down and do research, you are only going to talk about how to get something better to the next level. You're never going to come out with something new. You're never going to come out with something new, right? See, you take somebody like Henry Ford. You know what Henry Ford said? I never believed in market research because if I had gone and asked people, what do you want? They would have said, we need a faster horse. We need a faster horse to travel. Nobody would have told me I need a car. Nobody would have told me I need a car. People would have told me I need a faster horse. How can I make my horse run faster? That is what people would have asked me for. So the invention of car, it came from the fringe. It didn't come from the research. Of course, research is important because if you want to have incremental growth in engineering, you need to have research, you need to have peer reviewing methodologies, everything is important. But if you want inventions, if you want problem solving, you need to go to the fringe, you need to go out in the field, you need to get exposed to real-time problems. So it cannot be taught in classrooms, it cannot be taught in conferences, it cannot be taught in project presentations. Please understand that. So are you looking out for a problem to solve? Are you looking out for a problem to solve in your Genius Hour? Connect with your local bodies and your panchayat and your village. And let me just show you this, that there was this one particular campus in Kerala who was able to do this. They literally did this. I'll show you the video, what exactly a faculty and a group of students did for a region called as Wayanad in Kerala, where I'll probably, the idea just came out of their Genius Hour project. I'll just show you the video and you will be able to connect everything that I said just now with this one video. I hope all of you can see the screen, health service. Yeah. I hope all of you can see the screen. Yeah. Okay, great.
The students of Government Engineering College, Wayanad, have come up with an innovative mobile app for COVID-19 testing. The vehicle, Whisk on Wheels, sterilized using advanced technology, can be used to collect swab samples. Whisk on Wheels is the abbreviation of Walking Sample Collection Kiosk on Wheels.
ഒരുപാട് പ്രവാസികൾ ഇതോടൊപ്പം തന്നെ നമ്മുടെ കേരളത്തിലേക്ക് കോവിഡുമായി ബന്ധപ്പെട്ട് വരുന്നു. അപ്പോൾ ഇവരുടെ സാമ്പിൾ കളക്ട് ചെയ്യുന്നതിനും അതിന്റെ ടെസ്റ്റ് നടത്തുന്നതിനും നമുക്ക് പല സ്ഥലങ്ങളിലാണ് ക്യാമ്പുകൾ സെറ്റ് ചെയ്തിരിക്കുന്നത്. അപ്പൊ ഇവിടെ എല്ലാ സ്ഥലത്തും ഒരു കിയോസ്ക്, ഒരു വിസ്ക് സെറ്റപ്പ് ചെയ്യുക എന്ന് പറയുന്നത് വളരെ ഒരു ഭഗീരഥ പ്രയത്നമാണ്. അപ്പൊ ഈ ഒരു ഡിഫിക്കൽറ്റി നമുക്ക് ഒഴിവാക്കാനായിട്ട് ആരോഗ്യ വകുപ്പും ഗവൺമെന്റ് എഞ്ചിനീയറിംഗ് കോളേജ് വയനാടും ഒരുമിച്ച് സംയുക്തമായിട്ട് ക്രിയേറ്റ് ചെയ്തൊരു പ്രൊഡക്റ്റ് ആണ് വാക്കിംഗ് കിയോസ്ക് എന്ന് പറയുന്ന പ്രൊഡക്റ്റ്. കോവിഡ് സാമ്പിൾ നമുക്ക് എവിടെ പോയിട്ട് വേണമെങ്കിലും കളക്ട് ചെയ്യാനായിട്ട് സാധിക്കും. ഇതിന്റെ ആംബുലൻസ് നമുക്ക് പ്രൊവൈഡ് ചെയ്തത് ഡിസ്ട്രിക്ട് ഹോസ്പിറ്റൽ മാനന്തവാടിയാണ്. അപ്പൊ ഇവിടെ നിന്ന് കിട്ടിയ ആംബുലൻസിനെ ഞങ്ങൾ ഇവിടെയുള്ള മെക്കാനിക്കൽ എഞ്ചിനീയറിംഗിലെയും ഇലക്ട്രിക്കൽ, ഇലക്ട്രോണിക്സിലെ അധ്യാപകരും സ്റ്റാഫുകളും ഒരുമിച്ച് സംയുക്തമായി കൂടിച്ചേർന്നുകൊണ്ട് ഒരു പ്ലാൻ തയ്യാറാക്കി. അതിനുശേഷം ഈ ആംബുലൻസിൽ നമ്മളൊരു കിയോസ്ക് രൂപകൽപ്പന ചെയ്തു. 2 ചേംബറുകളാണ് ഈ ഒരു കിയോസ്കിനുള്ളത്. അതിൽ ഒരു ചേംബർ ഡോക്ടറുടെ പ്രവർത്തനങ്ങളൊക്കെ ഉള്ളതാണ്. രണ്ടാമത്തെ ചേംബർ ഈ കോവിഡ് സാമ്പിൾ കളക്ട് ചെയ്യാൻ വരുന്ന ആളെ പ്ലേസ് ചെയ്യാനുള്ള ചേംബറാണ്. ഇതിലെ ഫെസിലിറ്റികൾ എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞു കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ ഒന്നാമതായിട്ടുള്ളത് ഇതിന്റെ ഈ മൊബൈൽ ഫെസിലിറ്റി തന്നെയാണ്. ഈ ഒരു ചേംബർ നമുക്ക് എവിടെ വേണമെങ്കിലും ആംബുലൻസിന്റെ സഹായത്തോടെ കൊണ്ടുപോകാൻ സാധിക്കും. രണ്ടാമത്തെ ഫെസിലിറ്റി എന്ന് പറയുന്നത് ഇതിന്റെ സാനിറ്റൈസേഷനും ഡിസിൻഫെക്ഷനുമാണ്. സാനിറ്റൈസേഷന് വേണ്ടി യൂസ് ചെയ്യുന്നത് ഇലക്ട്രിക് സാനിറ്റൈസർ ആണ്. അതുപോലെ തന്നെ ഡിസിൻഫെക്ഷൻ യൂസ് ചെയ്യുന്നത് UVC ലൈറ്റ് ആണ് യൂസ് ചെയ്യുന്നത്. അപ്പോൾ ഇത് നമ്മൾ DRDO പോലുള്ള.
Okay, so I'm not taking too much of your time, but I'll just I hope you got the idea, right? I hope you got the idea. The person who is speaking is a very good friend of mine. He's an electronics and communication professor at Government Engineering College, Wayanad. He is an IIT Guwahati MTech pass out. And this is did you understand the video, everyone? Though it was in Malayalam, there were subtitles. Are you guys there? Super initiation. Correct, Kirti. So what they do is for their Genius Hour projects, what they do is they connect with the local bodies and they talk to people. They talk to people and they try to get these ideas from real time grassroots level problems, and then they go ahead and assign people. So when I spoke to him, you know what exactly he said? He said, sir, we form a team with the monkeys and the elephants. So we take people who are technically brilliant. We also take people who can do people management, people who can communicate, people who can do presentation, people who can do negotiation, uh, people who can do convincing. And that is how we have designed our curriculum, where we can accommodate both the monkeys and the elephants. So, and see, if you do this, the crossover learning will fall into place. Trust me when I say this. Crossover learning will fall into place. You don't have to necessarily work towards crossover learning. What is crossover learning? Very simple. It is an attempt to combine curriculum with learning in an informal setting. You're taking your students outside the classroom, right? And you're you're making them learn from outside the classroom, right? And if you do this, your crossover learning falls into place. But as a faculty, your leadership is very, very important. Your leadership skills is very, very important. You cannot have an autocratic style of leadership as a teacher. Please go back and read more about it. You cannot have a free range style of leadership as far as a teacher is concerned. If you want a genius hour to be successful in helping students to be problem solvers with real time grassroots level problems, using their subject knowledge, their ability, and their transdisciplinary skills, participative leadership style is what is recommended for teachers. Understand that. With autocratic, you cannot find solutions. With free reign, you cannot. I don't have enough time to talk more about these leadership styles. Maybe in a different session, I shall definitely talk about it, but I'll leave you with this idea that you please go back and read more about participative style, because participative style is what is required in the modern day educational system. Gone are those days when the teacher becomes autocratic. Gone are those days when you can just freely leave your students. No, it is a participative model that is going to work, where you and the students, all of you, come together and work towards a common task. So what exactly is the threat that we are talking about? Now, if at all we don't educate our kids, okay, if at all we don't educate our kids in a way that we are talking about in the last 1 hour, this is the threat. For students starting a 4-year technical degree, half of what you learn in your first year of study will be outdated by the time you are in third year of study, since the amount of technical information is tripling every year. Now, if there is a faculty from an MBA institute here, you can also go out and identify problems, and with your managerial skills, with the administrative skills, you can still make your students be part of a lot of real-time problems. It is not just engineers. Probably you can ask your MBA students to connect with an engineering college, get those students from the IEEE department, have a synergy, and still go about it. And that is what MBA is all about, right? That is what administration is all about. That is what people management is all about. What if, as an MBA faculty or an engineering faculty, we don't do this? Do you agree with me when I say this? That for 4-year technical degree, half of what you learn in your first year of study will be outdated by the time you are in your third year or your fourth year. Do you agree with me when I say that? Do you agree with me when I say that, guys? Anyone? Yeah. So this is one of the examples. I can probably give you another example for MBA. I can probably give you another example. We don't teach students in this sort of a manner, with real-time problems, with problem solving, reasoning, with accommodating those elephants and the monkeys. You know what? We are not going to reach anywhere with our students, because the amount of information is exponential in this world right now. No engineering academic curriculum can catch up with it. The only thing that can catch up with is the fact that, see, when is it that technology advances? Technology advances when you have modern problems. When you have modern problems, people come out with modern solutions, and that is how modern technology will come. Like, why Google Pay? Why Paytm? Modern problems. Modern problems has created modern solutions with modern technologies. So unless and until you connect your students with modern problems, they will never be able to catch up with modern technology. Because when they connect with the modern problem at the grassroots level, and then they go and read about how I can solve it, and then somebody says, okay, so machine learning is the thing. You probably need machine learning to develop a device which will probably help you to solve this problem. Then that student will be motivated to go and learn about such skills, right? These are the technology skills to learn in 2021. Can you believe? Are we teaching any of these? Of course, case study is a great idea, Mayuri sir, 100%. I totally agree with that. 100% I agree with that. Technology skills to learn in 2021. The question is, are we teaching any of these skills to our students? This is just an example. It's just an example for engineering. I can probably take examples for MBA in another session, but are we teaching any of these skills as part of our academic curriculum in its full glory? That is the question. In its full glory, that is my question. Yes, of course, we have engineering in artificial intelligence, but the question, fundamentals are very, very important. Vijay Kumar sir, I don't deny at all. Fundamentals, as I said earlier, you need to teach people petrol engine and diesel engine even after 15 years. If there is a mechanical engineer, I would ask him to learn about petrol engine and diesel engine, because he has to know from where electrical vehicles stemmed out. So if at all we don't connect people to real-time problems, the problem is they won't be connected with modern technology. Now, that is the biggest challenge that we would have as faculty at some point of time. So now, you know what exactly is the current trend that we are doing? Okay, can I take 10 more minutes if that is okay with all of you? I'll just take 10 minutes and probably we'll wind it up. Probably, can I just take 10 minutes and wind it up? Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I'll just take 10 minutes and we'll wind it up. All right. So now, what exactly students do at this point of time? Just to facilitate that industry interface where they want to be connected with the industry, people usually what they do is they just internships, seminars, workshops, conferences, industry interaction, certification, technical and management fest, and research. So this is what they usually do to be connected with the industry. Fantastic. Now, my only request to all of you is, whenever you facilitate internship or a seminar or a workshop or conferences, industry interaction, anything, you facilitate anything that you want, just keep it in your mind that, are we managing the expectations of the industry? Is this what I really want to do with my students? Is this a sort of learning that I want to facilitate with my students? Always ask this question. So when they are doing a seminar, ask this question: are they solving a real-time problem? Are they solving a real-time problem with a real-time technology? They're doing a workshop. Are they doing a workshop for a real-time with a real-time technology? Are they trying to upgrade their skills with the real-time technology? So whenever they do these traditional practices, always try to connect with whatever I discussed in the last 40-45 minutes. So because at the end of the day, we are driving them into a problem-solving mentality. Okay, so I need to rush a bit. See, so now the question is, as I said earlier, we are trying to get them into jobs, right? What exactly the industry wants, okay? So I talk to people from Infosys, I talk to people from Kirloskar, Ashok Leyland, I talk to people from MRF, Goldman Sachs, I talk to a lot of recruiters. You know what they say? They say that, see, we don't ask any of these engineers and MBA what's their CGPA, because we don't care. We are not bothered about it. We are not bothered about who is the first rank holder of their respective university. Pune University, who is the first rank holder for MBA and BTech, we are not bothered. We are not really bothered about their CGPA. We just need 3 things in their resume for them to get the job. One, the series of initiatives that they have taken as a student, being part of an MBA curriculum or an engineering curriculum. How many problems did they solve during their education? And what are the sort of projects where they were able to demonstrate the skills that they have learned? If an engineering or an MBA or any student or an arts and science student can have these 3 things on their resume, and if they can probably talk about it, we will give them a job. But we cannot give them a job only with a CGPA. So if you are preparing your students for the industry, if you are teaching your students MBA or engineering for the industry, always ensure that these 3 things are very, very there. And if you can implement your Genius Hour for about 1 year and 2 years, imagine the number of initiatives that the student will be part of, the number of problem solving that the student will be part of, the sort of skills that that student would have demonstrated in the series of Genius Hour activities. Just imagine that. And you would have met the industry expectation. That is what I would like to say. And towards the end, I would just like to put one point to all of you. Go and explore the startup culture in India in your campuses. MBA campuses, engineering campuses, do not underestimate the idea of startups, because India has the 3rd largest startup ecosystem in the world. Now, if you can probably inculcate and imbibe the culture of startups in your campuses, maybe by the time in 2nd year, by the time they're in S3 or S4, or by the time they reach MBA 2nd semester, motivate them to come out with some sort of a start. Let them fail. Let them fail. It is okay. Let them fail. Let them have a startup. Let them go around and attend boot camps, workshops. Let them interact. Let them do networking. And let them do something and let them fail. It is okay. Let them go and do 150 presentations for funding to government organization or venture capitalists or angels or investors. Let them go and fail, but they will learn. They will learn beyond their classrooms, right? So please go and read more about startup culture. And again, I'm pressing for time, everyone. That is the reason why I'm not going into the details. Now, towards the end, the last thing that I want to say is, see, students who succeed in getting a job are those who is competent to display employability skills and not just academic skills. Understand that. This is the reality. No student is going to get a job and get employed and empowered only with academic skills. They need employability skills. Unless and until as a faculty, you and me, if at all we are not able to inculcate that employability skill, the idea of employability into our students, we cannot get them empowered as well. Please understand. So these are the harsh realities that all of you should keep it in your mind. Getting an engineering degree and securing a job are two different things. Or getting an MBA degree and securing a job. Getting an engineering degree or an MBA degree is no assurance for a job. Having a great CGPA is not going to help students get jobs. Engineering degree and employability are two different syllabus. Learn employability skills or teach employability skills to secure job placement and not just academic skills. Academic skills are very, very important, but that alone is not going to help the students. Please understand. And towards the end, I hope I'm just going to take 120 seconds and probably we'll wind up. Can I take 120 seconds and sharp by 12:40 we will wind up? Yeah. I just want to show you one last video for all of you. That SecMol, okay, the school that I showed you in the beginning, SecMol, all right. So does SecMol has a Genius Hour session? Are they solving problems? Are they taking initiatives? Are they demonstrating skills? And let me just show you a fantastic video which will demonstrate everything for you. All right.
This is not a remnant of a melted glacier. It's an artificial water reservoir, the shape of which is reminiscent of a Buddhist sanctuary, a stupa made of ice. The idea was conceived by Sonam Wangchuk, an engineer from Ladakh in northwestern India.
Now, cones are shapes which have minimal surface area for the volume. So the sun cannot melt it as quickly as it does horizontal flat ice. And therefore it melts slowly as the summer approaches. And as it melts, it gives its water to the farmers.
Ladakh is famous for the world's highest altitude cold desert. In a region which gets only between 50 to 100 millimeters of rainfall annually, the glaciers have been a life source for ages. They provide water for the cities and for the farmers as well. But due to climate change, almost 20% of the glaciers in the area have been lost in the last 50 years.
Okay, so I'm probably not taking too much of your time, but just to tell you, he is the founder of SecMol School. I don't know how many of you are surprised. He is the real Rancho. He is the real Rancho that you saw in Three Idiots. He is Sonam Wangchuk. He is the person who is behind SecMol Ladakh. He is the one who is taking students who have failed in their 10th standard. So if they can do it, all right. So if they can do it, why not people like you and me? I mean, I don't know. I don't see any reason why we cannot do this. So thank you. Thank you so much, everyone. And it was a pleasure talking to all you lovely people. It's always a pleasure talking to teachers, exchanging ideas. And I sincerely hope that I was able to add some value to your journey, in becoming a great teacher. Thank you. And if you have any questions, then please do put it across to me. I'll be more than happy to take it. And thank you so much. And I do apologize for taking extra 10 minutes. Pleasure. Appreciate the opportunity and time. Thank you.
Thanks, Ranjit. Thank you for that such a interactive session, I would say. I mean, there are the chat box is flooded with appreciations as well as yes and reacting to your questions. So very nice. Thank you so much for accepting our invite. Yeah.
Thank you. So, Sushma ji, a lot of people had asked me questions in between, and I kind of missed it out of my pace. So please ask me those questions again. I would request you to put those questions. So but one cannot change all alone at institute. Correct, Mayuri sir. But then, the whole thing is, if we start thinking like that, nothing will happen, right? Each one of us should do our job really well. That's what I try to do, because I am part of a system which is totally lethargic and incompetent. I know, trust me when I say this, I talk to people from different campuses where I feel helpless that I'm not able to help the student. I can give you an example. Like last week, I received a notification from TCS saying that they're giving opportunity for arts and science students. And that was the last day for their, registration. So I spoke to this placement officer in this college and I said, sir, could you please get the students registered? And he said, I received this notification 2-3 days back, but I didn't push it much. And I just went totally bonkers. But then that didn't stop me from doing what I wanted to do, right? I went and put it out on Instagram, LinkedIn. I got in touch with the students somehow. So if each one of us, at our levels, if we do our job really well, we can at least make the system, slightly better. And I always believe that it is better that we at least make it 1% better the next day that you get up in the morning. Let's not expect 100%, but at least 1% better would do a lot of good. And if there is that one student, in a student's life, at least with that one student, if you can make a change, I think that's going to be amazing, I guess. Yeah.
Right. Thank you for sharing the difference between pedagogy and andragogy. And I think it gives us a lot of scope now to go back and read, what this is. And also about, servant leadership, drive. Yeah, sorry.
Sushma, I'm just taking the questions. Huh?
Okay.
Soumya, you should inculcate that in your academic curriculum. Because if you bestow this responsibility only on your placement department, your students are never going to get jobs. The monkeys will get the jobs, not the elephants. Understand? And the monkeys don't need placement cell or you or me. So you'll have to inculcate and always think about employability. When you teach something, when you talk to the students, always think about, is this actually helping my student with the employability? Yes, of course, do things for academics, but do things for employability as well. So when you're doing things for employability, do it out of your own will.
Did we lose connect? I mean, Ranjit, can you hear us? Huh. One second. Ranjit.
Yeah, I'm here, Sushma. I'm really sorry. My laptop count off. So, So thank you so much, everyone. As I said, please inculcate, employability skills in your academic curriculum. I think that is what is it. Thank you. My energy levels, that is the only thing that I have, Sunil sir. There is nothing else. A lot of positivity. Correct. See, this particular training program itself is a path-breaking idea, right? That all of us are able to come together and exchange ideas. Somebody like me from Trivandrum talking to somebody from Pune, exchanging ideas through a technological platform called as Zoom. That itself is path-breaking, right? You will never be able to come to, probably, I don't know, half of you may not be able to come to Mangalore if it was a physical session. Just because it is an online session, you were able to attend, you were able to meet me, I was able to meet you. So I'm sincerely hoping that even COVID is actually taking us through certain positives in life, but it is about how we look at it. How we look at it. I think that's most important, I guess. Yeah. Sushma ji, can I just take 5 minutes time? Somebody asked me about the books.
Sure.
Yeah. So I don't know who, there was somebody who asked me about the books. So the book about Bin Laden is, it is written by his first wife and his third son. It is being narrated by his first wife and third son. And, it is being written by somebody called as Jane Sasson. So this book is beautiful. It just tells you when you have the right attitude and the wrong intention, what will happen with life. That is what the book is all about. When you have the wrong intention and the right attitude, because Osama bin Laden has got amazing attitude. He takes up a task to the extent up to which he goes and fulfills those tasks is amazing. But quite unfortunately, he had all the wrong intention in the world. So that is what this book is all about. The RSS book is, I wanted to know the RSS ideology. Because there is so much of halla balla going on in our country about BJP and RSS. As I said earlier, to validate from where exactly RSS stemmed out, what exactly is the real ideology. So this is by Sridhar Dhamale and Walter K. Anderson. It's a book that was published in '82. So this is sort of a revamped version. So if you want to know about the real RSS and their ideologue, I would definitely recommend you to read RSS. I'm not a supporter of any of the political parties, but just out of my own interest with politics, I bought these books. Yeah.
Right. So
Author of RSS books. Somewhere it is Sridhar Dhamale and Walter K. Anderson.
all right.
Yeah.
So shall we wind up?
Sure.
Yeah. So anybody would like to give a Thanksgiving? Anybody would like to come out of mute? Are you able to?
Sushma ji, would you like to introduce me now?
You know what? Secretly, I've sent your profile to them already. Okay, so this is Ranjit Keshav for you, dear participants. I'm sure you had energetic and I see a lot of people coming in during your session. So the attendance was very good. So I think because you went ahead of 12:30, people dropped out a little. But yes, otherwise,
they should also know that I was part of all the sessions till now.
Yeah. So, yeah, all the sessions since yesterday. There was this one logo blinking, Ice Cube learning. Yeah. So thank you, Ranjit, and thank you, participants, for being part of this training. Our next session will be at around 1:30. So we have only little time to have lunch. So please have a good lunch and come back at 1:30. Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Ranjit.
Thank you, Sushma.